Imagine playing a video game on easy mode, right? Like all the cheat codes are unlocked before you even pick up the controller.
Yeah, you've got, infinite health.
Exactly. Infinite health, unlimited currency. Every map is just already revealed for you.
Right.
And now, imagine the player at the end of that game holding up their trophy, looking right at the camera, and claiming they won simply because they, hustled harder than everyone else.
Which is just wild when you think about it.
It is. And so today, we're completely dismantling the biggest lie you've been sold about success.
Yeah, it's this deeply ingrained myth of the pure meritocracy. I mean, the idea that input always equals output.
And we're fed this narrative constantly, aren't we? The self-help industry, business magazines, motivational speakers.
Not all of them.
They all sell this incredibly clean, physics-like equation. Like if you wake up at 4 a.m., take ice baths, and grind for 100 hours a week, the universe is just obligated to point at you and say, there is your reward.
Right, like success is entirely within our control.
Exactly. But for this deep dive, we are unpacking a core text that just shatters that entire equation.
It's called The Unfair Advantage by Ash Ali and Hasan Kubba.
Right. And the mission today, and really the reason we're speaking directly to you, the listener, is to help you identify your own real-world cheat codes, regardless of where you started in life.
Yeah, and to do that effectively, we have to start with a serious reality check.
We really do.
Because we need to examine a quintessential modern success story, one that's, often paraded as the ultimate triumph of the young, brilliant hustler.
Evan Spiegel, the co-founder of Snapchat.
Exactly, Evan Spiegel.
So at 24 years old, Spiegel became the youngest self-made billionaire in the world.
Right?
Now, if you only consume the standard hustle culture narrative, you'd assume he simply willed his way to $1 billion from some barren garage, powered by nothing but tap water and sheer grit.
But Spiegel himself actually offered a quote that is astonishingly candid.
Oh, yeah. What did he say again?
He said, "I am a young, white, educated male. I got really, really lucky, and life isn't fair."
Wow. I mean, it is rare to hear a founder at that level openly acknowledge the systemic tailwinds behind them.
It's incredibly rare because when you analyze the actual environment of his upbringing, the sheer density of his accumulated privileges is just staggering.
We aren't just talking about a comfortable middle-class existence here.
No, not at all. He grew up in a multi-million-dollar household in Los Angeles.
Let's paint the picture of what that actually looks like, We're talking about ultra-exclusive country clubs, luxury cars, vacations at Four Seasons resorts across the globe.
And his education, he attended the Crossroads School for Arts and Sciences.
Right, an incredibly elite private school in LA.
He was walking the halls with literal Hollywood royalty.
Yeah, the children of major studio executives, people like Kate Hudson, Jack Black, and notably Sean Rad.
Who would later go on to co-found Tinder.
Exactly. But the environmental advantage goes so much deeper than just rubbing shoulders with celebrities.
It does. It's really about the cognitive environment his parents created.
Because both of his parents were immensely powerful, highly successful lawyers.
Right. His mother was the youngest female graduate in the history of Harvard Law.
Wow.
And his father was a prominent litigation partner who worked on massive, historically significant cases.
Like the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, exactly. That level of high-stakes corporate law.
So think about the dinner table conversations in that house.
Yeah, you're not talking about normal teenage stuff.
No, he isn't just inheriting wealth. He's passively absorbing this highly sophisticated, high-stakes corporate vocabulary.
He's learning how power dynamics work.
Right, how massive litigations are structured and how the world's most powerful entities negotiate.
And Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, actually specifically pointed this out.
What did you say?
He noted that Spiegel credited his father's long legal calls, which, he would just overhear while doing his homework, as giving him this intrinsic, almost subconscious perspective on business structuring and leverage from a very young age.
I mean, that builds a specific type of cognitive flexibility that most 20-somethings simply do not possess.
Not even close. And then we have to look at the network.
And network is wild.
When it comes time for college, his father's status as a powerful alumnus and financial donor to Stanford University,
which certainly acts as a massive buffer when applying to the most competitive tech incubator on Earth.
Exactly. And once he's there, his family connections arrange an introduction to Peter Wendell.
And Wendell is one of the most prominent venture capitalists in the United States.
Yeah. And Wendell then introduces Spiegel to this staggering lineup of tech titans.
We're talking Eric Schmidt, Chad Hurley, the co-founder of YouTube, And Scott Cook, the billionaire founder of Intuit.
And Cook doesn't just give him advice.
Right.
He actively mentors Spiegel and then puts crucial capital into Snapchat's earliest round of funding.
Okay, but wait. I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Sure.
Because if we just list all of his privileges, it sort of feels like we are completely invalidating his hard work.
Yeah.
Doesn't this border on a slippery slope of saying he only won because of his dad's Rolodex?
I get that.
I mean, Snapchat was a genuinely innovative product.
That is a vital distinction, and it's one the authors of the book are very careful to make.
Right.
This is not about invalidating hard work. Evan Spiegel is undeniably brilliant.
He is.
He executed flawlessly on a highly counterintuitive insight.
The idea that in an era where everything on the internet was permanent, people actually secretly craved impermanence.
Exactly. Photos that self-destructed, Facebook and Twitter missed that completely.
Totally missed it.
Spiegel and his team worked relentlessly to build that. Hard work is the engine, but the unfair advantage is the multiplier.
I love that analogy. It's like an engine in a Ferrari goes a lot faster than an engine in a tractor, even if they are both working at absolute maximum capacity.
Precisely. As Spiegel himself admitted, it's not about working harder. It's about working the system.
Right.
If he had poured 100-hour weeks into a product nobody wanted, he would have failed, regardless of his network.
Of course.
But his unfair advantages, the immediate access to top-tier funding, the mentorship from billionaires, the unshakable confidence instilled by his elite upbringing, they served as a massive multiplier for his effort.
Which brings us to the core tension of this entire framework.
Yeah.
You, the listener, might be hearing this and feeling a sense of defeat.
It's easy to feel that way.
You might be thinking, well, I wasn't born in a multi-million-dollar LA mansion to Harvard law graduates, so the game is rigged and I am just doomed.
But the ultimate goal of the source material isn't to depress you.
No, it's to give you a customized map. The objective is to help you audit your own life to find your hidden multipliers.
Exactly. Because to work the system, you first have to stop believing the lie that the system is perfectly fair.
We have to completely deconstruct the myth of the hustle.
We really do. We have to look at how the self-help industrial complex sells effort as the sole variable for success.
And there is an incredibly clarifying perspective on this from Katerina Fake.
Oh, she's brilliant.
She is a highly respected venture capitalist and a serial entrepreneur. She co-founded Flickr, which she sold to Yahoo for around $20 million.
And then she built another company that sold to eBay for $80 million.
Right, and she wrote a piece titled "Working Hard is Overrated," which sounds like absolute blasphemy in Silicon Valley.
It really does. But her argument is rooted in the mechanics of how markets actually function.
How so?
While markets are complex, adaptive systems, they are not simple physics equations where force equals mass times acceleration.
Right.
She pointed out that throughout her career, she witnessed countless entrepreneurs who worked themselves to the bone, put in the blood, sweat, and tears, and still completely failed.
Because effort is a prerequisite for entry, sure, but it is not the magic mechanism that generates a successful outcome.
It's the difference between necessary and sufficient conditions. Hard work is necessary, but it is rarely sufficient on its own.
Reid Hoffman, the billionaire co-founder of LinkedIn, captured this perfectly.
I love this story.
When he was asked on a panel how much of his staggering success was due to his own relentless hard work and intelligence versus how much was due to sheer luck and privilege.
His response was immediate.
Right. What did he say?
He stated, without a breath of hesitation, the answer is massively both.
Massively both. It's a duality that our brains really struggle to process.
We want it to be one or the other. It's so much easier if it's black and white.
And no one illustrates the luck side of that duality with more stark honesty than Warren Buffett.
Yes. Arguably the most successful investor in human history.
And he actively points out the extreme statistical improbability of his own wealth. He refers to it as the ovarian lottery.
That is such a visceral way to describe birth privilege.
It really is. Let's unpack the mechanics of his ovarian lottery, because he attributes his success to 3 highly specific, completely random variables that were entirely out of his control.
Okay, so first, he was born in America.
Right.
Second, he was born in the year 1930.
Okay.
And third, he was born with a neurological wiring that was perfectly optimized for capital allocation.
Meaning the ability to read financial abstraction and figure out how to multiply money.
Exactly.
Let's actually think about the mechanism of that.
Yeah, let's play it out.
If Buffett had been born with that exact same brain, that same genius for capital allocation, But he was born in a hunter-gatherer society 10,000 years ago.
His genius would be entirely useless.
Right. You cannot allocate capital if capital, compound interest, and complex financial markets haven't been invented yet.
He would have likely been a very mediocre hunter.
Exactly. Or, to bring it closer to our current reality, Buffett explicitly acknowledges that if he had been born female or if he'd been born black in America in 1930,
his future would have been drastically different.
the systemic architecture of society at that time simply would not have allowed him to leverage his specific cognitive talents in the same way.
The doors to high finance were locked based on biology.
Right. His success required his specific brain to intersect with a specific economic era, in a specific body that society deemed acceptable to do business with.
But wait, if we accept this, if we accept that the ovarian lottery dictates so much of our starting position, and that the market is just a casino of complex variables,
Doesn't this framework run the risk of breeding a massive victim mentality?
that's the danger.
If it's all luck and timing, why shouldn't the listener just throw their hands up and stop trying?
And that is the exact psychological trap the authors aim to dismantle.
How do they do it?
To avoid that trap, they introduce a mental model called the reality growth mindset.
The reality growth mindset.
Okay. It requires an individual to actively hold two completely opposing truths in their mind simultaneously. It is an exercise in managed cognitive dissonance.
So what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, the reality component demands that you look at the board with absolute cold clarity. You must accept that unfair advantages exist.
Like sexism, ageism, nepotism, inherited wealth.
Exactly, and random tragedy. They are irrefutable facts of life. The playing field is heavily tilted, and pretending it isn't is just toxic positivity.
You have to accept the gravity of the situation.
Yes, but simultaneously, the growth component demands that you operate as if you are the absolute master of your own destiny.
You must take radical responsibility for your outcomes.
And believe that you can maneuver, adapt, and achieve within the realm of your available assets.
Because leaning too far in either direction just destroys you.
It really does.
If you index entirely on the reality that the world is unfair, you sink into bitterness. You become paralyzed by resentment.
If you spend your life complaining about what you lack, you become a victim.
Right. But conversely, if you index entirely on the growth side, believing you have 100% total control and that your sheer willpower is all that matters,
you will become deeply disillusioned, burned out, and probably clinically depressed when the complex variables of the market don't hand you $1 million in 6 months.
the reality growth mindset is the mechanism that balances fierce ambition with necessary self-compassion.
It's about seeing the board clearly so you can actually play the pieces you've been dealt.
And to prove that you do not need to start with Evan Spiegel's elite hand of cards to play this game well, the text pivots to the human element.
Yeah, we look at the radically different origin stories of the two authors themselves, Ash Ali and Hasan Kubba.
Their journeys are masterclasses in identifying hidden multipliers within massive apparent disadvantages.
Let's begin with Ash Ali. He refers to himself as the street-smart maverick.
His origin story is the polar opposite of the Stanford to Silicon Valley pipeline.
Completely. Ash was raised in Birmingham, England, in a severely impoverished, crime-ridden neighborhood.
Just to understand the environment, he vividly recalls the police cordoning off his street as a child because there had been a shotgun murder in the house directly across from his.
Wow. And the only visible wealth in his ecosystem belonged to local criminals driving new BMWs.
Right. His father worked grueling shifts at a local steel factory. There were certainly no venture capitalists at his dinner table.
No Peter Wendells dropping by.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
And academically, the traditional system completely failed him, or, he failed it.
He lacked the patience for rote memorization.
He dropped out of sixth form college, which is the equivalent of high school in the UK, at age 17. Twice.
He was labeled the black sheep of his family, the kid who was going nowhere while his peers headed off to university.
But he possessed this innate, restless, entrepreneurial drive.
Yeah, by age 15, he was burning pirated encyclopedia CDs and selling them to neighbors just to generate his own cash flow.
Fast forward a few years and he is stuck living in his childhood bedroom, working a retail job at a local Staples store.
But the mechanics of that specific retail job became the catalyst.
Because Staples didn't just sell pens.
Right. They sold technical books about this burgeoning new thing called the internet.
And after his shifts, Ash would sit in the aisles and obsessively read manuals on how to build websites using raw HTML.
He had a friend whose parents owned a brick-and-mortar shoe warehouse.
And in 1998, Ash had the audacious idea to build a website to sell those shoes online.
We really need to contextualize the friction of doing this in 1998.
Oh yeah. There was no Shopify, there was no WordPress, there were no plug-and-play payment gateways.
If you wanted an e-commerce store, you had to manually code the infrastructure.
Which Ash did in his parents' attic, typing on an X-Display PC he bought at a discount from Staples, running on a 56K dial-up modem.
Which means every time he was coding or uploading files, he was completely monopolizing the family's only phone line.
His parents thought he was delusional.
They actually bought him a novelty Future.com millionaire card for his 19th birthday, purely as a sarcastic joke.
Ouch. But he framed that card, put it in his window, and kept fighting the friction.
He had to convince skeptical internet users in the late 90s to input their credit card numbers into a raw HTML form.
And eventually it worked. The site gained traction. Strangers began sending money for shoes.
The site was even nominated for an Internet Retail Award, which put him on the radar of agencies in London.
So he packs a bag, leaves Birmingham, and secures a highly lucrative agency job in London at just 19 years old.
It sounds like the perfect underdog victory.
It really does. But the macroeconomy had other plans.
He moves to London and is immediately hit with crushing imposter syndrome.
He is a young, teetotal, Muslim, Asian teenager with a thick, Brummy accent, suddenly thrust into managing university-educated professionals in their late 20s and 30s in this slick corporate environment.
And then the mechanism of the market struck.
March 2000.
Yep. The dot-com bubble spectacularly burst.
We are talking about a macroeconomic rip current that evaporated roughly $5 trillion in market value.
Highly speculative, over-leveraged tech companies just collapsed overnight.
Ash's agency lost its funding, and he was abruptly fired.
He had to pack his bags and move right back to his parents' house in Birmingham.
Feeling like an absolute failure.
But sitting in that childhood bedroom is where the core epiphany of the book is born.
He starts analyzing the timeline. He realizes that getting fired wasn't a reflection of his work ethic.
Right, it was the result of a macroeconomic collapse and internal office politics.
But far more importantly, he realizes that getting the high-paying job in the first place wasn't solely due to his hard work either.
He identified his tailwind. It was the sheer luck of timing.
He had accidentally stumbled into learning the highly complex, frustrating mechanics of building websites at the exact historical moment the internet was experiencing explosive global commercialization.
Right. If he had taken a retail job at a clothing store instead of Staples, he never would have read those HTML manuals.
If his friend's parents sold perishable food instead of non-perishable shoes, the logistics of his 1998 startup would have failed.
The specific timing, coupled with a rare technical skill set built out of necessity, that was his unfair advantage.
He recognized this, weaponized that specific expertise, and leveraged it to become the first marketing director at a young startup called Just Eat.
And he built their growth engines, which eventually propelled the company to a massive £1.5 billion IPO.
The kid selling pirated CDs built an IPO-level engine because he learned how to wield his asymmetric knowledge.
Now, to see the versatility of this framework, we must contrast Ash's story with his co-author, Hasan Kubba.
Right. Hasan refers to himself as the unnatural entrepreneur.
His starting environment was fundamentally different. Hasan was born in Baghdad.
On his first birthday, his parents literally presented him with a cake shaped like a doctor.
The systemic expectation was immediately set. You will excel academically, study medicine, and attain traditional prestige.
His family eventually relocated to London. They experienced early financial friction, relying on free school meals, but eventually stabilized enough to send him to a modest private school.
And he followed the script flawlessly. He was academically gifted and entered university on a medical path.
But 6 months in, the reality of the day-to-day life of a doctor hit him. He realized he had zero desire to spend his life in hospitals treating the sick.
So he pivoted and eventually graduated with an economics degree, but he found himself completely adrift.
Unlike Ash, he had no innate hustle. He wasn't flipping items for cash as a teenager.
He wanted the outcome, passive income, freedom, the ability to travel, but he lacked the behavioral mechanics to get there.
So he does what a lot of people do. He buys an expensive, comprehensive online business course.
He has all the theory laid out right in front of him.
But then he experiences total paralysis.
The friction of perfectionism and the deep-seated fear of failure, instilled by his high-achieving academic background, completely freeze him.
This is a critical psychological barrier for highly educated individuals.
It is. The curse of knowledge makes them hyper-aware of all the ways an endeavor can fail.
To shatter this paralysis, Hasan makes a highly strategic move. He realizes he needs practical emotional armor.
So he gets a job, but specifically a grueling sales job at a small investment brokerage.
Let's talk about the mechanics of that environment. This brokerage is filled with working-class East London brokers.
These guys don't have economics degrees.
But what they possess is an almost frightening level of emotional capital and raw persuasion.
Hasan sat there and observed the psychology of the cold call.
He watched these brokers pick up a phone, bypass the lizard brain friction of rejection, read the microfluctuations in a prospect's voice tonality,
and convince wealthy, skeptical investors to part with significant capital in a matter of minutes.
He intentionally subjected himself to this brutal environment to systematically build resilience.
He learned how to reframe rejection as just a data point and master the mechanics of human persuasion.
And once he acquired that specific emotional capital, he quit.
He partnered with a friend for accountability, overcame his perfectionism, and systematically built a highly lucrative, entirely passive income SEO agency.
He achieved his goal. He was living as a digital nomad, traveling the world, making money while he slept.
But then, Hasan experiences a profound, paradigm-shifting epiphany of his own.
He is living in Manila, in the Philippines.
Right. He's walking through a glittering, wealthy business district, holding a half-empty bottle of expensive Evian water.
And a young, barefoot girl approaches him, begging not for money, but specifically for his leftover water.
She was experiencing severe, desperate thirst.
That interaction completely shattered his worldview.
It forced him into a visceral confrontation with the sheer magnitude of his own luck.
He realized that his parents had made the decision to flee Iraq in 1991, mere moments before international economic sanctions triggered hyperinflation.
Which collapsed the economy and led to widespread malnutrition.
That barefoot child begging for water could very easily have been him.
He realized his passive income empire wasn't just built on his clever SEO tactics.
It was built on the foundation of a British passport, fluency in native English, the geopolitical stability of London,
and the financial safety net that allowed him to live rent-free at home while he figured out his business model.
When we synthesize these two vastly different narratives, what emerges is the underlying mechanics of asymmetric information and leverage.
Every systemic disadvantage creates a corresponding, often hidden advantage.
To take that a step further, Ash's massive disadvantage of having no formal degree and zero capital forced him into a state of severe constraint.
And constraint is the mother of ingenuity.
He couldn't buy his way out of problems, so he had to build technical capital.
His lack of formal education made him a highly adaptable, practical expert exactly when the market needed builders, not theorists.
And Hasan's disadvantage of lacking natural, innate entrepreneurial fire meant he didn't rely on chaotic bursts of hustle.
Instead, he approached business like an economist and a medical student.
He systematically studied the psychology of sales, he mapped out automated systems, and he built a flawless, passive machine.
His analytical caution, which was initially a barrier, became the architecture of his freedom.
They both audited their specific realities and leveraged what they had.
Which brings us to the formal definition provided in the text.
An unfair advantage is a condition, asset, or circumstance that puts you in a favorable business position that cannot be easily copied.
It is intrinsically unique to your specific intersection of traits and environment.
And the book utilizes a brilliant physical analogy for this: cycling.
Imagine you are on a bicycle. An unfair advantage is the equivalent of a strong tailwind.
If you are cycling directly into a headwind, fighting against the aerodynamic resistance of the air, it is going to be incredibly grueling.
You will expend massive amounts of caloric energy just to move forward a few inches.
But if you have a powerful tailwind pushing against your back, you cover significantly more ground with a fraction of the metabolic effort.
If you possess the insight to check the wind's direction before you start, you can map your entire route to ensure you are continually pushed forward rather than constantly fighting resistance.
This is the essence of leverage.
And Warren Buffett applies this exact mechanism to corporations through his concept of the economic moat.
Buffett envisions a business as a castle.
Right, and he refuses to invest in a castle unless it is surrounded by a deep, treacherous moat.
A sustainable, structural competitive advantage that protects the business from invading competitors.
This could be brand dominance, high switching costs, or proprietary technology.
The authors argued that your personal unfair advantages constitute your individual psychological economic moat.
And the most crucial element to grasp is that these personal moats are accumulative.
They compound over time. It is the snowball effect applied to human capital.
Malcolm Gladwell thoroughly investigated this biological and sociological phenomenon in his book Outliers.
He examined the rosters of elite Canadian youth hockey teams and uncovered a bizarre, statistically impossible pattern.
A massively disproportionate percentage of the professional players were born in the months of January, February, and March.
Why? It's not because the winter stars align to create better athletes.
No, it comes down to the bureaucratic mechanics of how youth sports are organized. The cutoff date for age brackets is January 1st.
Exactly. So consider the biological reality of a 10-year-old child.
A child born on January 2nd is almost 12 full months older than a child born in late December of that exact same year.
At that stage of human development, a year represents roughly 10% of their entire lifespan.
The biological difference in muscle mass, bone density, neurological coordination, and emotional maturity is vast.
So the coaches, looking for the quote-unquote best players at age 9, naturally select the January kids simply because they're biologically more mature.
But here is where the accumulative advantage locks in.
Because those kids make the elite travel team, they suddenly receive a massive influx of resources.
They get superior coaching, they receive double the amount of practice ice time, and they compete against higher-tier opponents, which forces them to adapt and improve faster.
Fast forward 10 years, and those January kids are objectively phenomenally better hockey players.
Not because of intrinsic genetic superiority, but purely due to the compounding sociological mechanics triggered by the random luck of their birth month.
This is the Matthew effect in sociology. To those who have, more will be given. Success systematically begets success.
This compounding reality is exactly why early-stage venture capitalists rarely scrutinize the spreadsheet or the specific business idea.
Because the idea is almost irrelevant at day zero. They're scrutinizing the human beings.
The text highlights Eileen Burbidge, a prominent venture capitalist, who plainly states, often the only thing we have to gauge is the team.
Let's unpack the psychology of that. At the seed stage, a startup is basically a hallucination.
There is no revenue, the product is full of bugs, and the market might not even exist yet.
The only tangible variable is the combined unfair advantages of the founders.
Investors are essentially asking, does this specific team possess the unique insights, the resilience, and the networks necessary to force this hallucination into reality?
They are looking for founder-product market fit.
Think of it like a director casting a movie.
Yeah, the market is the script, and the product is the character.
You don't just want a good actor, you want the right actor whose specific lived experiences, eccentricities, and physical presence perfectly align with that specific role.
You cannot just pick a random, trending business idea. You must select an idea that perfectly aligns with your specific tailwinds.
Which leads us to the core utility of this deep dive. How do you actually map your tailwinds?
The authors have engineered a diagnostic tool called the Miles Framework.
It is a comprehensive audit designed to help you identify your personal economic moat.
MILES is an acronym representing money, intelligence and insight, location and luck, education and expertise, and status.
Let's dissect the M, money.
Right. Money is the most overt, universally understood, unfair advantage.
In the context of building a venture, money buys you runway.
Let's define the mechanics of runway. Your burn rate is the amount of cash your startup consumes every month just to keep the lights on server costs, basic living expenses, software subscriptions.
If you have $50,000 in the bank and your burn rate is $5,000 a month, you have exactly 10 months of runway before your company dies.
Having significant personal wealth means your runway is essentially infinite.
You can afford to take massive risks, iterate on a flawed product, pivot your entire strategy, and not experience the cortisol spike of wondering how you will pay rent next Tuesday.
The text also delves into the 3 F's of early-stage capital: family, friends, and fools.
If you are born into a wealthy socioeconomic network, your primary funding mechanism is a casual conversation.
You don't have to spend 6 months building pitch decks and enduring brutal rejection from institutional investors.
You simply call your uncle or your college roommate whose parents have a family office and secure a $50,000 check to build your prototype.
It is a massive friction bypass.
But we have to address the obvious constraint here. What if you, the listener, are listening to this on your commute, living paycheck to paycheck?
If money is a multiplier, what is the strategic advantage of having absolutely zero capital?
This is where we examine the double-edged sword of capital. Abundant early funding often acts as an anesthetic.
Startups with too much initial cash frequently become bloated, arrogant, and lazy.
They spend heavily on marketing to force people to buy a mediocre product, completely ignoring the lack of genuine product market fit.
But severe financial constraint forces a completely different physiology on a business.
It forces sheer, unadulterated scrappiness.
When you have zero capital, you cannot afford to be wrong for very long.
You must run extremely lean operations. You cannot buy attention. You have to earn it through viral creativity or profound utility.
A lack of money forces you into immediate, raw contact with your customers because your literal survival depends on delivering value that they will pay for today.
Necessity is not just the mother of invention. It is the ultimate filter for product market fit.
That constraint leads perfectly into the second pillar, because when you lack financial capital, you must rely entirely on cognitive capital.
Let's move to the I in Miles, intelligence and insight.
And we need to elevate this beyond the cliche of book smarts versus street smarts.
Absolutely. While raw processing power IQ is undeniably beneficial, particularly in highly technical fields, the text emphasizes that outsized leverage is generated by other, more nuanced forms of cognitive ability.
We're talking about cognitive flexibility, social intelligence, emotional capital, and what the authors bluntly refer to as bullshit detection.
The intuitive capacity to recognize asymmetric risk and identify when an environment or a partner is structurally unsound.
The distinction between general intelligence and specific insight is where massive value is created.
Let's analyze Jan Koum, the billionaire founder of WhatsApp.
His journey perfectly illustrates this mechanism. Koum was raised in Soviet-era Ukraine under the pervasive, oppressive surveillance of the state police.
He eventually immigrated to the United States, living in government housing, relying on food stamps.
He possessed zero financial capital and zero societal status.
What he did possess was intense technical intelligence. He became a highly skilled systems engineer and hacker. That was his foundational intelligence.
But the insight, the multiplier that turned a messaging app into a $10 billion behemoth, was entirely derived from his specific, painful lived experience.
Insight is a deep, highly specific understanding of a structural flaw in the market.
Because Koum grew up in a society where a careless conversation could literally lead to your disappearance, he viewed data privacy not as a corporate buzzword, but as a fundamental human right.
He viewed advertising not just as annoying, but as a form of invasive surveillance.
So when he architected WhatsApp, he infused his technical intelligence with his unique insight.
He built a platform with absolute end-to-end encryption. He instituted a militant policy of zero advertisements and refused to hoard or sell user data.
That specific, unyielding insight, driven by the trauma of his youth in Ukraine, is what generated such fierce global user loyalty. He built a fortress, not just an app.
This illustrates how insight is most frequently discovered by scratching your own itch.
You identify a point of severe friction, discomfort, or exclusion in your own daily life that the macroeconomic market is ignoring.
The text provides the example of Tristan Walker, the founder of Walker & Company.
Walker recognized that the shaving and grooming needs of black men were being systemically ignored by the massive legacy razor conglomerates.
The products on the shelves literally caused painful skin irritation for his demographic.
The executives at those multi-billion-dollar legacy companies possessed immense financial capital and status.
But they completely lacked the cultural and physical insight because they did not interact with the problem.
Walker, because he lived the problem, possessed an asymmetric vision of the market. He scratched his own itch, solved the physical pain point, and built a massive brand.
The authors are incredibly explicit about how a listener can engineer this insight.
You cannot discover insights by staring at a competitor's spreadsheet or reading market reports.
You have to physically interact with friction.
You must observe human behavior, ask probing questions, and pay intense attention whenever someone complains that a process is complicated, painful, or exclusionary.
Those complaints are the raw ore of insight.
Moving from internal cognitive traits, we transition to the circumstantial architecture of your environment. The L in Miles. Location and luck.
Let's dissect the economics of location.
We constantly hear location, location, location in real estate, but it is equally deterministic for human capital.
The economic disparity between operating in a hub versus a non-hub is vast.
Consider the trajectory of Huda Kattan, the founder of the global cosmetics empire, Huda Beauty.
Her strategic manipulation of geography is a masterclass.
She initially moved to Los Angeles to attend a premier makeup artistry school.
That location was functionally necessary because LA is the dense epicenter of the entertainment and glamour industry.
It allowed her to build high-level technical skills and immerse herself in the aesthetics of celebrity culture.
But here's a critical pivot. If she had remained in Los Angeles, she likely would have achieved success as a highly sought-after, behind-the-scenes artist for Hollywood elites.
But she wouldn't have built a global empire. Her true location advantage was unlocked when she relocated to Dubai.
By moving to Dubai, she acted as a geographical bridge.
She brought the highly technical Hollywood glamour aesthetic into a massive, structurally underserved market in the Middle East.
The women in that region possessed significant disposable income and a deep cultural appreciation for high-end cosmetics.
But the global brands were largely ignoring their specific aesthetic desires.
Her physical location allowed her to identify and capture that massive market arbitrage.
But we must also analyze the friction of hubs. Cities like Silicon Valley, London, New York, or Dubai are financially toxic to early-stage ventures.
The cost of physical real estate and the hyper-competitive salary demands of local talent will vaporize your runway in months.
Operating in a non-hub location dramatically alters your financial physiology.
It forces you to build robust systems for remote collaboration and asynchronous work.
Mastering that allows you to access a global, highly skilled talent pool at a fraction of the cost of a developer in San Francisco.
Furthermore, your location is no longer strictly physical.
The authors stress the vital importance of your digital location.
How optimized is your website's architecture for search engines? How frictionless is your user interface?
If you are invisible to the algorithms, you are effectively operating a business in a dark alley with no street signs.
Which transitions us to the second, far more elusive, luck.
How do you audit a concept that is, by definition, random?
This is where we have to fundamentally rewire our understanding of probability.
The text relies on the groundbreaking research of psychologist Dr. Richard Wiseman, author of The Luck Factor.
Wiseman's premise is that luck is not a mystical force. It is largely a psychological and behavioral mechanism that can be engineered.
To empirically test this, Wiseman designed a brilliant, highly controlled experiment.
He recruited two subjects: Martin, who self-identified as a consistently lucky person, and Brenda, who self-identified as plagued by chronic bad luck.
He instructed both of them to walk down a specific street, enter a specific coffee shop, and wait for further instructions.
But the street and the coffee shop were a staged psychological environment.
Wiseman planted a crisp 5-pound note directly on the pavement in the pathway to the shop.
Inside, he strategically seated a highly successful, well-connected businessman at a prominent table.
Same physical location, same exact environmental variables for both subjects. Let's look at the mechanism of what happened.
Martin, the self-identified lucky subject, walks down the street. He is relaxed, his posture is open.
He spots the 5-pound note, picks it up, enters the shop, uses the found money to buy a coffee, sits down next to the businessman, and initiates a friendly conversation.
He walks out with free capital and a highly valuable networking connection.
And Brenda?
Brenda, the unlucky subject, walks down the exact same stretch of pavement.
She is tense, focused entirely on the destination.
She completely steps over the 5-pound note, entirely oblivious to it.
She enters the shop, purchases her coffee, sits in silence next to the businessman, and stares straight ahead.
She experiences the exact same environment but extracts zero value from it.
That is a staggering revelation. Let's explain the neuroscience behind why that happens.
It comes down to peripheral vision versus foveal vision.
When an individual is anxious, stressed, or hyper-focused on a singular goal, which is often the state of people who feel unlucky, their brain literally narrows their visual field.
It's an evolutionary survival mechanism called tunnel vision, designed to focus entirely on an immediate threat.
Precisely. They become blind to environmental anomalies.
But people who consider themselves lucky operate in a more relaxed neurological state.
This relaxation widens their peripheral awareness, both visually and cognitively.
They're simply scanning a broader spectrum of reality, which allows them to notice the 5-pound note on the ground.
Or the subtle body language of an investor in a coffee shop who is open to conversation.
Luck, therefore, is not fairy dust. It is the mathematical byproduct of being highly observant, maintaining a cognitive state open to anomalies, and having the behavioral bias to take immediate action when an opportunity presents itself.
You manufacture luck by increasing your surface area for serendipity.
Which perfectly primes the final two pillars: how we construct and project our value within the broader society.
The E and the S in Miles. Education, expertise, and status. Let's dissect education.
The The societal default is that formal, elite education is the ultimate advantage.
But the authors draw a sharp, utilitarian distinction between formal schooling and informal expertise.
The mechanism of an elite degree from Harvard, Oxford, or Stanford operates largely on signaling theory.
For a non-technical founder, that degree is a multi-million-dollar receipt that proves to the market that you have survived a rigorous, highly exclusive societal filter.
It serves as a heuristic for investors, instantly lowering their perceived risk.
It grants immediate institutional trust and, critically, embeds you within a high-net-worth alumni network.
But what if you are Ash Ali dropping out of college at 17?
If you lack the signaling power of the institution, you must relentlessly build expertise.
Expertise is built entirely through the friction of the real world. You do not need a syllabus to acquire it.
Ash built technical expertise by manually typing HTML code and watching it fail over and over until it worked.
Hasan built his by absorbing rejection on the cold-calling floor.
Expertise is the accumulation of hundreds of micro-failures and the resulting adaptations.
It is built by stepping into the arena and letting the market violently correct your assumptions.
And that hard-won expertise is the foundation for the final and perhaps most complex pillar, status.
The book defines status as your perceived ability to add value to others.
Status operates on two distinct frequencies, outer and inner.
Outer status involves the superficial, easily quantifiable metrics society uses to rank us: wealth, job title, physical appearance, and even age.
The age dynamic is fascinating because it shifts depending on the industry context.
In a legacy corporate law firm, gray hair and advanced age grant you the status of wisdom and experience.
But in the hypergrowth tech sector, youth is fetishized.
Investors automatically grant higher status to a 22-year-old because they assume the youth possesses an innate, intuitive grasp of emerging technological paradigms that older founders lack.
A prime example of weaponizing outer status is Kylie Jenner.
She did not possess technical engineering skills or decades of cosmetic chemistry experience.
What she possessed was the ultimate distribution network. Over 100 million hyper-engaged social media followers.
She leveraged that massive outer status as her core unfair advantage to launch Kylie Cosmetics, bypassing traditional retail friction to build a billion-dollar brand almost instantaneously.
Or consider the Collison brothers, the brilliant minds behind the payment processor Stripe.
Yes, the Collisons utilized a specific subset of status known as cultural capital.
They were raised by parents who were highly successful entrepreneurs themselves.
They didn't just inherit money, they inherited the implicit, unwritten rules of how the business world operates.
They knew how to speak the language of venture capitalists, they understood how to conceptualize risk, and they were entirely comfortable operating in high-stakes environments.
That cultural capital gave them an aura of inevitability.
But this leaves a massive question. What if you, the listener, are auditing your life right now and realizing you possess zero traditional status?
No massive social following, no entrepreneurial parents, no elite degrees.
You are entirely on the outside looking in.
This is where we examine the profound asymmetric power of the outsider.
Inner status is the foundation here. That is your internal self-esteem and your unshakable conviction in your own vision.
When you possess robust inner status, you can leverage your lack of outer status as a weapon.
Consider Sarah Blakely, the billionaire founder of Spanx.
She is the ultimate case study in outsider advantage. She was selling fax machines door to door.
She had zero fashion industry connections, zero textile manufacturing experience, and zero corporate status.
But that exact lack of status gave her the clarity of the outsider.
The legacy hosiery industry was entirely dominated by male executives who were designing products based on theoretical spreadsheets, not physical reality.
Because they were insiders, they were blinded by the curse of knowledge. They simply accepted how things had always been manufactured.
Sarah was an outsider, but she was the actual end user of the product.
Her disadvantage of being a complete novice meant she wasn't burdened by industry dogma.
She possessed the raw insight to recognize that the existing products were physically agonizing, and she had the audacity to demand a completely new manufacturing paradigm.
Her lack of status insulated her from the groupthink that was blinding the multi-billion-dollar incumbents.
Her outsider perspective became the foundation of an empire.
So we have mapped the entire territory. We've audited the Miles framework: money, intelligence and insight, location and luck, education and expertise, status.
The critical pivot now is application. You've audited your life, you've identified your unique tailwinds.
Sure.
What is the actual mechanism for deploying this in the real world?
The audit is utterly useless if it remains theoretical. You must actively weaponize this framework, particularly when you are pitching.
Whether you are trying to extract capital from an investor, recruit a brilliant engineer to join your team, or convince your first 10 customers to trust you, you must explicitly articulate your miles factor.
You cannot just walk into a room and say, "I have built a really efficient piece of software." That is a commodity statement.
Exactly. You must frame the software through the lens of your unfair advantage.
You must say, because of my specific lived experience growing up in this environment, I possess a unique insight into an unmet market friction that the legacy companies are structurally blind to.
And because of my specific location and built-in network, I possess a zero-cost distribution channel to our first 10,000 users.
You were explaining why you are the only biological entity capable of executing this specific vision.
Application also completely redefines how you must approach networking.
The authors highlight a massive, pervasive error that amateurs make when trying to build social capital. They send the dreaded "pick your brain" email.
It is the most toxic phrase in networking.
Reaching out to a highly successful, time-starved individual and asking to grab a coffee to pick your brain is an entirely extractive proposition.
You are essentially asking to leech their most valuable asset, their time and accumulated expertise, while offering absolute zero utility in return.
The psychology of networking relies heavily on the principle of reciprocity. If you want to network upward, you must engineer a way to add value to them first.
When Hasan initially met Ash, he was fully aware that Ash had just executed a massive IPO and possessed immense status.
Hasan did not ask for a favor, a job, or an introduction.
He investigated what Ash was currently struggling with, and he offered his own specific expertise to help solve Ash's problem, completely free of charge.
That initial deposit of value built genuine social capital and mutual respect.
To synthesize this entire operational framework, the authors present Melanie Perkins, the founder of Canva, as the ultimate paragon of stacking unfair advantages.
Canva is now a ubiquitous, multi-billion-dollar design platform, but her origin story is an exercise in relentless mechanism design.
She did not start with a Stanford degree or Silicon Valley connections.
She was located in Perth, Australia, which, in the context of global tech venture capital, is an extreme non-hub.
She was teaching university students how to use highly complex legacy design software like Photoshop.
That environment provided her initial insight. She observed firsthand the intense cognitive friction her students experienced trying to master these bloated programs.
Her insight was simple but profound. The future of design needed to be entirely web-based, collaborative, and so intuitive that it required zero training.
But she didn't just write a business plan. She built expertise by launching a small, highly constrained yearbook design business to empirically test her hypothesis in a micro-market.
Once she validated the concept, she realized her physical location was a massive liability for raising the necessary capital.
So she manipulated her location advantage by repeatedly flying to Silicon Valley.
In Silicon Valley, she faced a brutal gauntlet of rejection. Over 100 venture capitalists told her no.
But she relied on her massive reserves of inner status, an impenetrable confidence in her core insight, to absorb that rejection and continue refining her pitch.
And then she engineered luck.
This is my absolute favorite detail.
She discovered that a prominent, highly connected investor was obsessed with kite surfing.
So what does she do? She doesn't send a pick your brain email.
She literally endures the physical punishment of learning how to kite surf just so she can organically place herself in his physical environment, participating in his specific subculture.
That is the ultimate manifestation of manufacturing serendipity.
By entering his environment, she built a relationship based on shared friction, which eventually allowed her to pitch Canva.
She secured the investment. She successfully stacked insight, built real-world expertise, strategically altered her location, manufactured luck, and leveraged inner status until the momentum became unstoppable.
Which brings us to the culmination of our deep dive today.
We began by confronting the comforting illusion of the pure meritocracy.
We accepted the vital duality of the reality growth mindset, acknowledging that the architecture of life is profoundly unfair and heavily dictated by random systemic variables, while simultaneously embracing absolute radical responsibility for our own actions within that system.
We unpack the mechanics of the Miles framework, how money provides runway or forces creative constraint.
How intelligence and insight are forged from lived friction, how location and luck can be systematically engineered, and how education, expertise, and status dictate our perceived value.
The ultimate directive is that comprehension without execution is meaningless. The authors present a final, uncompromising call to action.
Identify a point of friction, engage directly with the humans experiencing that pain, engineer a solution, and fundamentally charge money for it.
If the market refuses to pay for your solution, you have built a hobby, not a viable economic engine.
And as you execute, you must build a psychological firewall of gratitude.
Gratitude is not just a soft emotional concept. It is the tactical antidote to the imposter syndrome and the inevitable bitterness that will attempt to derail you when the systemic headwinds become severe.
I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought to explore on your own that builds on everything we've unpacked today.
Take a ruthless inventory of what you currently consider your absolute greatest disadvantage in life.
The specific constraint you complain about the most. The circumstance that feels the most fundamentally unfair.
Based on the complex mechanics we've discussed, how might that exact pain point, that specific limitation, actually serve as the foundational architecture for an insight, an expertise, or a resilience that absolutely no one else in the market possesses?
How is your specific broken lens actually providing you with a clearer, more asymmetric view of a problem the rest of the world is blind to? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.